Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. I'm going to show you a wild game, Vidit Gujrathi against Alexei Shirov. This was played in the first round of the FIDE Grand Prix tournament, the second FIDE Grand Prix tournament in Belgrade. And so far, well, the format is working out very well again. There are 4 groups of 4 players, and only the winner of each group will go through to the knockout stage. So players really playing uncompromising chess. And that's what we saw in this game. So Shirov with black playing the Najdorf, and here Vidit played Queen d3. Now, so many sixth moves have been played in this position. Queen d3 looks bizarre to me. However, we saw this in a few critical games actually over the past year. So Magnus Carlsen played this in Vikonsé 2021, just over a year ago, and won a game against Grandelius. And then in the last round of that same tournament, Jordan van Foreest used it to great effect to win a really nice game. So what is the point of this move? I mean, it looks absolutely bizarre. It looks like the queen could be really vulnerable on this square. Well, let me just remind you of that Carlsen-Grandelius game, which went like this. And Carlsen just exchanged and played the queen to g3. And this is one of the points of the move, is that the queen actually looks at g7, also d6, and it's actually not that easy for black to develop smoothly in that case. Although that's quite playable for black. Shirov played knight d7 here, which to my eyes looks really logical because the knight, of course, has options to attack the queen from either c5 or e5. Bishop e2 from white. I mean, it just looks very odd indeed, you know, when this queen sort of impedes the bishop. Nevertheless, it's not so silly. I have to say my first thought with black here would be just g6 and then bishop g7. I mean, this setup is absolutely standard. But it's been shown in a few games that actually white gets pretty decent chances after this. Castle's queenside and then f4. And we can now see one of the other points of playing the queen to d3, that it doesn't take too much to be able to castle queenside, and actually white has quite a nice initiative here. So it's not quite as silly as it looks, this queen d3. Shirov played aggressively with b5. And in that important game I mentioned, Van Foreest against Grandelius, Van Foreest played a4, and it was a pretty chaotic game, but Van Foreest won. But instead of a4, Vidit played knight d5. And already you can see that white has the possibility to play knight c6, which would actually trap black's queen. So therefore bishop b7 played, covering the c6 square, but also looking through d5 and e4. And now a4 from Vidit. So this exploits the fact that this pawn has advanced at quite an early stage of the game. And you can see that white is kind of stirring up trouble on the queen side. And that's very logical. So black is getting embroiled in a battle there. But it's going to take time for this king to get to safety. Whereas for white, it's going to be a lot easier. So this is very logical. And if, let's say, b4, then queen c4 is a bit annoying. Looking at, obviously, knight c7 check threatened, but also looking at that pawn there. Shirov played knight c5, which seems very reasonable, attacking the queen and also the pawn here. So knight takes f6 check, g takes f6, and then queen e3. So at least Vidit has been able to just damage black's pawns a bit. Still some tension here, and if knight takes a4, then knight takes b5. Of course, if that's taken, then bishop takes b5 check, which would be rather nasty. So Shirov played pawn takes pawn on a4. So now there's going to be a threat here. So pawn to f3 covers that e4 pawn. I think I'm just going to close the window if you don't mind. Just 1 second. That's a little bit better. Suddenly a plane decided to come over. So yeah, I mean, playing f3 secures that e4 pawn and kind of shuts out the knight and the bishop for the time being. And, well, black has to think about where the king goes. Probably shouldn't live in the middle of the board. You know, you'd like to play bishop g7, but then knight f5. So what about e6? But then white castles. Let's play rook d1, so there could be some pressure here. Castles, but, you know, let's say white plays this move queen f2, and that'll allow this bishop out. Could allow the queen out as well. So black has a slight problem here that pawn is a little bit vulnerable. You know, at some moment, white is going to get some attack against the king as well. It's not an easy position to control for black. And I come back to this point that actually this bishop and knight don't stand very well because they're rather blocked by that pawn. So instead of that, Shirov decided to take the bull by the horns here and really go for it in the middle of the board. e5. Now that looks crazy because it gives the knight this wonderful square on f5. However, Shirov had a few moves planned, so he's breaking out straight away. Pawn takes pawn on d5. Queen takes d5. So Shirov, you know, has broken down the pawn on e4, but it is at a cost, because that knight looks really good. So that's why he played e4. I quite like queen f2 actually, just preparing to bring the bishop into the game potentially. But e4, Shirov is trying to get these pieces into the game, busting open this long diagonal, but also, of course, attacking that knight on f5. So knight e3, and the queen came back to c6, and Vidit succeeded in castling kingside. And actually, although Shirov is trying to bust open the long diagonal, then actually white is very well protected on the king side. So white's king is pretty safe. Now black's king, on the other hand, now this is a problem because you have to just look at the board and you think to yourself, well, where is the black king going to find safety? On the king side, these pawns have been damaged. On the queen side, you know, the position is blown open there as well. It won't be safe in the middle of the board. So what do? You castle queen side. Now, I suppose the argument is that with these pieces in front of the king, then black's king has some security, but there are no pawns there. So that is potentially a problem. Let's see what happens. Knight c4. So that prepares the way for the bishop, but also looks at knight a5 as well. So the queen comes to e6, just preempting knight a5. And then b3. So Vidit is basically deciding, okay, I'm going to just give up a pawn or give up another pawn just to break open lines against black's king. It looks like a really logical move. For the last few moves, black could have played rook g8, which might have been a bit of a distraction for white. And that can still be played in this position. But instead, Shirov took an extraordinary decision. And that was to take that pawn. He knows no fear. And then came a critical moment in the game, knight b6 check. Now, Shirov played the king to b8. He rejected queen takes knight. Now, this is really interesting. He could have played this. Of course, he gets the queen back with this check. Attacks the queen, so the queen has to take. And then pawn takes pawn here. Not the only move. There are bishop e3 also possible. Question is, can black's king survive when these bishops and the rooks look like they're about to attack black's king? You know, the bishop can come to f4. There's bishop g4 coming as well. These rooks can hit the c and b files. This is such a tricky position for black to play, and I'm not surprised that Shirov rejected it, but well, objectively, this is the best continuation. The computer thinks that black can just about survive, but I think it's kind of understandable that Shirov declined to go in for that. You know, you could lose almost instantly. Instead, he played king b8, but this did not work out well. Bishop f4 check. And the king obviously can't step there in the line of the queen. So bishop d6 and now bishop c4. That knight is pretty stranded. And Shirov completely collapsed here. It's possible to survive with some intricate computer moves. Shirov played queen e8. e3 is the only way to hang on. I mean, some of these moves are really quite bizarre. Queen a2 still looks like black is in massive trouble with this simple double attack. Queen f5. Let me just take you through. This is a forced sequence. Still, I mean, it looks like white is just a piece up. In fact, there is a saving move here, and that's e2. Like I said, I think the chances of a human finding this continuation when you're short of time is almost impossible. And even at the end of it, white stands better. These pawns are split. That's not good. Black's king is still insecure. That's not good. That bishop just bites against that pawn. So white's king is completely safe. White is better, no doubt about it. And even to get there, a string of, you know, somehow quite bizarre moves. Instead, Shirov played queen e8. And after this exchange, and then bishop takes knight, Vidit was just a piece up for not a lot. Shirov stumbled on trying to attack, but actually Vidit had it pretty much under control. Of course, here there's a big threat, but after g3, that just closes the lines. And Vidit had it pretty much under control. Of course, you don't need to take this. That bishop is under attack, but bishop takes pawn. In fact, Shirov resigned here. He's a piece down. There's no way to get through to white's king. And in a moment, it'll be white's turn to attack black's king. And that'll be game over. So, well-deserved victory from Vidit, who managed to control tactics, to control Shirov's aggression. Sometimes Alexei just pushes it too far, but he's always entertaining. And of course, you know, we wish him well. I'm a big fan of Alexei, of course, having known him and played against him a long time ago. But seeing him throughout his career is such an exciting player. Anyway, FIDE Grand Prix in Belgrade is going ahead. Or of course, with the appalling invasion in Ukraine. It casts a pall over the whole event, and indeed the Russian players Grishuk and Andreikin and others. There are other Russian players there are playing under the Russian Chess Federation flag, not the Russian flag. And Grishuk has been really outspoken against the invasion. So yeah, it's pretty controversial what's going on even in the chess world as well. But anyway, let's try and focus on the chess, and that's some welcome distraction from a tragic situation. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.